You're not half bad. You killed my father. Like father, like son.
Welcome to the motherfucker. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this, what is a prevalent story for the last week or so, that Devin Haney and Shakur Stevenson jointly may be the latest high-profile signings to Zuffa based on rumors that have been out there, and that an official announcement could be just days away. You had to figure that both fighters being free agents and having the financial demands that they have, there are only so many ways to get at the kind of money they want. Just fighting on Turki Alalshikh's shows, it's only going to work so many times because he's only going to want to use you but so many times. Going to Zuffa, they might be able to fight on a more regular basis and still make the same kind of money. Both Devin and Shakur migrating over to Zuffa raises several interesting talking points, one of which Zuffa is supposed to be the bad guys? That's been the prevalent narrative in many boxing circles. A guy who goes by the name WSB Remy said, "No disrespect to Turki Alalshikh, but fuck Zuffa and Dana White for trying to ruin boxing and take it back to the Mafia-ran Stone Age boxing days where fighters had no agency." That's what he was saying beforehand. What he's saying now is if Shakur Stevenson and Devin Haney sign with Zuffa, that automatically legitimizes them simply because they're two marquee fighters of this era with Turki involved. I think they'll still make fights with other top names. I'm usually a malcontent when coming to these things, but quite frankly, I'm tired of being tired, and I'll just wait to see how things play out before I say anything else. Well, you've already said enough. Wasn't even me that pointed it out. It was, according to Boxing, that pointed out how hypocritical and wishy-washy this is. 1 minute, Zuffa's gonna ruin boxing. Next thing you know, because two of his favorite fighters may be going over there, now they're not so bad. Now they might be the answer. So let's address the initial comment that Zuffa is going to ruin boxing and take the sport back to the days of the Stone Age when the Mafia ran it. Oddly enough, when the Mafia ran boxing, boxing was a mainstream sport. The golden age and the golden era of boxers, with some of the best boxers that America has ever produced, was in fact when the Mafia ran things. It was a much bigger sport than it is now. Now it's a niche sport that only caters to a very small, niche audience. So maybe taking it back to the Stone Age wouldn't be so bad, and fighters as agency, they have too much. Which I've often mentioned here on the channel, that today's fighter has too much wiggle room to waste people's time, waste people's money, looking for money they're not even good for. Operational costs they can't cover. They don't care. And that's the problem. Leaving promotional outfits bleeding red ink and broadcasters wondering why they should even invest in boxing when they're getting nothing in return. All the while, the fighters want to make off like bandits, them and their teams. And they have, for a long while, up until the NBCs and the Foxes and the Showtimes decided they don't need boxing. So that every single one of those networks that decided to walk away from the sport represents money that's no longer being poured into it, and forcing the sport to fade further in the background of the sporting consciousness till it's not mainstream anymore. Out of sight, out of mind. I would argue that today's fighter has too much agency, too many chiefs, not enough Indians. Enter Zuffa Boxing, who's managed to bring Paramount back into the sport. They were already in it via Showtime and the PBC, and they decided to withdraw. With Zuffa, they decided to come back, and I thought it was because Zuffa represents a different framework where perhaps they can be more responsible with the operational budget and not fuck off as much money as Showtime did on the PBC. Though when you're paying Conor Benn $15 million and signing fighters like Devin Haney, like Shakur Stevenson, can you really do that? There's a way. It won't be Paramount Plus's money paying those fighters. I don't think the $15 million they kicked out to Conor came from them. That likely came from Turki. And whatever it takes to get Devin and Shakur to box under the banner, that's likely going to come from him too, whether they're good for it or not. Turki is the safety net in this situation. When it comes to fighters like Shane Mosley and Sergey Boachuk, your run-of-the-mill Zuffa card and your run-of-the-mill Zuffa fighters, yeah, that's probably coming from Paramount. Those guys don't really cost all that much, but for the bigger names like Conor, Devin, Shakur, that's going to be coming from Turki. Whatever that does, whether it generates a profit or not, that's coming from him. He's the safety net. And like the Remy guy said, having names like Devin and Shakur, who do have fan bases, they do have followers, it does help to legitimize Zuffa a little bit.
Not necessarily the Zuffa belt.
That's still going to be a tough sell to a lot of people, but just having guys like that over there, it helps. It helps them a lot.
And the hypocrisy?
What is boxing if not hypocritical? And all of the people in it, on both sides of the industry, the fans, the fighters, the managers, they're all opportunists and they're all hypocrites. 1 minute, Zuffa's gonna ruin boxing. Next thing you know, they're not so bad because two of your favorite fighters are going over there.
Oh.
So now you want to be open-minded. Now you want to reserve any judgment. It's hypocritical.
It's wishy-washy like your typical boxing fan, though what's the truth? What are the facts of the matter? And the fact is, Zuffa is not going to ruin boxing, nor are they going to monopolize it.
Zuffa can achieve some modicum of success by providing boxing for the fans that is more affordable than what you get on DAZN, because while DAZN may have all the major promoters and many of the major brands, they are a lot pricier than watching boxing via Zuffa on Paramount. A Paramount Plus subscription costs a lot less than a DAZN subscription.
And while you could have made the argument before that Zuffa is really just off-brand boxing,
their stable is primarily comprised of B, C, and D tier fighters. It's harder to make that argument if you can get Devin over there and Shakur over there, 2 pound-for-pound fighters that everybody knows.
not so off-brand anymore.
Now, who can we expect either Shakur Stevenson or Devin Haney to box once arriving at Zuffa? That's up to Zuffa.
I don't really have to rack my brain over it trying to figure out what they're going to do, because ultimately, that's up to Zuffa, how to best use these two very expensive fighters. And I maintain my original position that in the end, it's going to boil down to know-how. You can acquire a Conor Benn, a Devin Haney, and a Shakur Stevenson because you've got a lot of money. But do you know how to use them?
That's the part that requires know-how.
And all of this hullabaloo from the bleeding hearts like Nico Ali Walsh and Oscar De La Hoya about Zuffa being bad for the boxers, then why are so many of them going over there?
If they're so bad for the boxers.
If they're going to set the boxers, boxing, and the industry back 20 or 30 years.
If they're so bad for the boxers.
Why are the boxers the ones going over there? The Revival Act hasn't even passed yet. Not that they're under any obligation to go over there, because they're not before or after the act gets passed. But if they're so bad for the boxers like you guys say, why are the boxers going over there?
Because maybe they're not so bad for the boxers.
Why was it just Nico Ali Walsh and Oscar De La Hoya at the congressional hearing to discuss the Revival Act? Why didn't more of the boxing community show up?
If Zuffa is intended to be boxing's equivalent of Lord Sauron in Lord of the Rings, why wasn't there more of a joint effort from the boxing community?
Where the hell was everybody?
For all of the fear-mongering you've been seeing the last few months, more and more fighters are joining up with Zuffa.
I've never been the one telling you that Zuffa's going to take over, that they're going to run everybody out of business, or that they're going to monopolize boxing. I don't think it's going to come to that. What I have been telling you, though, is that they can achieve some modicum of success within their own lane. There is room in the industry for the existing framework and the new one from Zuffa.
They may not be able to coalesce the two frameworks, but they can begrudgingly coexist.
Now over to the prevalent narrative regarding yesterday's big upset in the light heavyweight division, David Morrell losing to a little-known area fighter in Zach Chelly.
Content creator Najee of Cigar Talk said, "I'm getting ready for the fight tonight on DAZN. I'm hearing David Morrell's getting his ass whooped. Benavidez ruins people's career. That dude is really scary."
Well, is that why David Morrell looked bang average before he fought David Benavidez?
This is a little more than damage control, not an evaluation of a fighter, fighters. This is just damage control to keep the guys on a pedestal you want to keep on a pedestal.
There was never any evidence of David Morrell's eliticism before he fights David Benavidez or after, and we've been all through that.
So was David Morrell never any good? Was he always this way? And believe it or not, I think in terms of raw materials, David Morrell could have been a better fighter than he turned out to be, but he became subject to the matchmaking over there at the PBC, which is more about marketing a fighter than developing one, and there's a very subtle difference.
One strategy aims to make you look good, and the other one aims to make you be good. It's not the same thing.
You can pinpoint the exact moment that David Morrell stops looking like a world beater, the moment he stops fighting on PBC shows, because that's literally how it happened. When he fought Hot Rod, that wasn't a PBC show. That was on the undercard of Crawford versus Madrimov, one of Turkey shows, and he hasn't looked like a world beater since then.
The Alalshikh fight, the Katayev fight, and yesterday's fight with Zach Chelli, none of which were the byproduct of the PBC's matchmaking geared towards making their fighters look good, look better than they are.
So on one end, you've got the PBC's haphazard vetting process, which is no vetting process at all. They just want to make you look good instead of being good. There's that. But there is also the move to the light heavyweight division that perhaps was premature for a fighter with just 9 or 10 fights.
It would seem that David Morrell's power from 168 did not carry over to 175. His punches didn't have the same effect, and the punches that he took,
those did have an effect, had an effect on him. Maybe it was too soon for David Morrell to go up to light heavyweight, but then why did he do it?
money.
After just 10 or 11 fights, David Morrell starts looking for the big money fights. You know, he wants a Canelo, he wants a Benavidez. Instead of continuing to develop as a fighter who hasn't been a pro that long, he wanted the money, so he chased it.
He knew he wasn't going to get a Canelo fight at 168, so he follows David Benavidez up to 175. That's where he fucked up.
Well, how the fuck did he get in line for Canelo in the first place?
Remember that WBA regular title that he held at 168? The one they manufactured for him for fighting God knows who.
That's how he got in line, when by all rights, he should have never been in line to fight somebody like Canelo Alvarez because he never fought someone that would have got him ready for a Canelo Alvarez, for a David Benavidez.
And they almost fooled me.
Based on what I was seeing from David Morrell at 168, I started to think, this guy might give David Benavidez some problems, up until he moves up and fights Alalshikh. That's when I knew, this guy is not elite, this guy's not ready, he might have some of the right ingredients, but nowhere near enough experience.
He should have never moved up.
And before he moves up, he never should have been boxing for any version of a WBA title. They rushed him, and that's the short version.
Why?
Well, do you remember who the WBA champion was at the time? It was Canelo. So maybe the PBC fast-tracked David Morrell to a WBA title fight on the premise they'll be able to hook Canelo. You've got David Benavidez coming at him from the WBC, then David Morrell coming at him from the WBA, all the while for holding a version of a WBA title, you can pretend that this guy's world class. You can market him as being elite.
Having faced no elite level opponents.
There isn't even a Caleb Plant or an Anthony Durrell on David Morrell's CV at 168 and at 175. When he does start fighting familiar faces, you see what happened to him.
Should have never been up there.
It's not really that David Benavidez ruined him, like the guy from Cigar Talk says. It's that the PBC ruined him by moving him too fast.
They didn't allow him to develop properly, and the bottom line is, he was never as good as he was made out to be. There was never any evidence of his eliticism, because this is boxing after all. You have to beat somebody to be somebody. So who did he beat?
These nuts.
So that explains the damage control that you are now seeing as it pertains to David Morrell, who never actually proved that he was a world-level fighter, an elite fighter.
From those who drunk the Kool-Aid.
Because there are people out there who really believed he was the genuine article, and others who are only putting him on a pedestal because of who else they've got on a pedestal. David Benavidez. They want to believe that he fought good fighters.
Elite fighters.
Except David Morrell was never elite. If you would have asked somebody, well, who's the best guy that David Benavidez fought up until he fights Zerto, they would have told you, David Morrell.
Many such cases, which now allows us to segue to what has fast become one of the most popular segments here on the channel, Ring IQ, hate mail.
Case in point, a guy who goes by the name Hands in Your Pockets said Jules is so obsessed with Benavidez that he talks about him when he had nothing to do with this weekend's fights.
So he never fought David Morrell?
I know he's the face of boxing.
The face of boxing needed to curtain off the entire top row because they couldn't sell those seats?
This whole channel now just seems like a vehicle for Jules's man crush.
Well, let's establish something, Hans. I'm not giving David Benavidez any heat that I didn't already give Errol Spence Jr. and Tyson Fury and many other fighters here on the channel, I'm sure you know. But you only take reservation when it comes to David. So is he my man crush or is he yours?
Well, there's nothing out of the ordinary about what I'm doing. I've done it before.
You've seen it, but you only get defensive. You only get in your tits about it when it's about David. So is he my man crush or is he yours? Let's not pretend there's anything out of the ordinary about seeing how victories age for fighters. When it comes to Usyk and his wins over Daniel Dubois, you see people saying that's a victory that has aged well, whereas many of David Benavidez's victories have aged like an avocado.
Stop me when I tell a lie.
So how is it that you expected me to evaluate yesterday's light heavyweight contest? David Morrell getting beaten up by an area-level fighter in Zach Chelly. I'm not supposed to mention David Benavidez?
I'm not supposed to talk about how Zach Chelly was able to knock that guy out where David Benavidez could not. I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Which isn't even the first time that's happened. He also fought Vosdick, who he couldn't knock out.
Just for a gatekeeper in Hot Rod to come in and do what David Benavidez didn't do. Knock out Vosdick. I mean, Vosdick had been knocked out before and after he fought David Benavidez, just not by David Benavidez.
Tell Jerry Soriano that.
Jerry Soriano says, we can break this down in simplest terms. Look at the punches Morrell withstood in the Benavidez fight, then look at the punches he's been dropped with since then and stopped. Punch resistance is gone. Is it me, or are fighters losing worse after losing to Benavidez?
Well, that would make a lot of sense, except Vosdick lost worse to Beterbiev than he lost to Benavidez, and David Morrell already started looking human before he lost to David Benavidez. So, I mean, what the fuck are you talking about?
Caleb Plant was left slumped over the ropes by a 5'7" Canelo Alvarez, whereas with David he was able to go the distance. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
For a response to Jerry's comment that's even better than mine, Flashback4588 said, good, and great fighters always come back. Cotto was vaporized by Pacquiao and still came back. Pacquiao got violently knocked out by Marquez and still came back. Anthony Joshua got knocked out by Andy Ruiz and still came back. Nonito Donaire got knocked out by Nicholas Walters and still came back. Dubois was stopped by Joe Joyce and still came back. Even Munguia can call himself a champion after getting stopped by a guy with 5 knockouts. None of that happened to Morrell in the Benavidez fight.
None of that!
So if he can't come back then, he was never that good to begin with.
That's a mic drop. And I still don't really understand why Jerry Soriano wants me to see David Benavidez through the same lens he does.
Telling you that I'm not doing or saying anything about David Benavidez that I haven't already said about other fighters. So maybe the reason Jerry gets so bent out of shape over it is because he knows how many times I've been right.
Because he knows I've got David Benavidez on fraud watch.
If you're so vehemently against what I'm saying, in such disagreement, why would you come here as often as you do?
Nobody's stopping you from liking David Benavidez. Nobody's knocking at your door, calling your phone, or sending you text messages telling you you can't like that guy.
You can't like his fights. You can like him. You can love him. I ain't stopping you.
But I ain't fooled by him either, and your constant crying in the comment section of my videos just gives me more material.
More letters to read in the hate mail.
The writing is on the wall, you just don't want to read it. It's either that or you're illiterate, and you don't even know what you're looking at.
Neither would surprise me.
So if any of this bothers you, you're definitely in the wrong place, because I'm not gonna stop. His time is coming, and I'm kinda glad that when it does, you'll be here.
To watch me gloat.